Righto, conversation we've been waiting for a couple of weeks, although the heat's just come out of it a fraction now. Jake Fraser-McGurk is going to the West Indies. Andrew McDonald is the coach of the Australian cricket team before he jets off tomorrow for this World Cup campaign. Andrew, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having us, Gerard.
You've named the travelling reserves.
We have, yes.
Who are they?
Jake Fraser-McGurk, much to your delight. I know that you've been campaigning for a period of time around that one, and Matthew Short. So we think we've got some able backups should anything move in the way that we want to play. So we think we've got a nice balance there.
Why do you take two batters in the reserve ranks?
Yeah, I think they're slightly different in what they offer. Obviously, Jake, we think, is an out-and-out opener. And the way that we've sort of grown Matthew Short into the team has been more through that middle order, but also that spin ability as well. So we've got we feel like he's a spinning all-rounder, much like Glenn Maxwell, if anything should move there. And then obviously Jake Fraser-McGurk, an out-and-out top-order player, but both exciting. And, I think they had a lot.
Is there an underlying injury concern around Dave Warner's hand?
No, not at this stage. So we believe he's fully fit. Everything he says he's fully fit. We know that he missed the last game for Delhi. Clearly that was a selection mechanism there with the way that they wanted to play late in the tournament. I think he played the second last round. He returned there. So, we've got no fears that he won't be fit and fully available.
How do we get Fraser-McGurk into the squad? Do you have to have somebody ruled out for the whole tournament?
It'll be an injury. So those guys that sit outside of the 15, the only way they can come onto the selection table is if there were to be an injury. And then, as I said, we've got two options there depending on what we lose or what may unfold in terms of injuries. And we've also got some other players in Spencer Johnson, Xavier Bartlett, that are playing in the UK as well. So if we were to lose a bowler, those guys are up and running in the UK, and we valued them playing games over there, and they can come in. It's only a short flight into the West Indies from England. So we've got a lot of people that are available as backups should anything move.
Should we have the Fraser-McGurk debate?
I think you've already had it.
No, I probably have. Have you left the hottest batter in the world out of the World Cup?
In your opinion, yes. There's no doubt what he did in the IPL. He lit it up. He's an extraordinary talent, and he's going to give fans much delight across the journey. In discussing the 15-man squad that we put out, we needed to cover all bases in the way that we wanted to play, and there was a lot of building that went into that over a period of time. And I think people would have seen that unfold in the series against New Zealand, the series against the West Indies, and even as far back as South Africa. So these things are put in play well in advance, and there's no doubt that he did turn our heads, and he was a huge discussion when it come to the final 15. So he was running hot, and there's no doubt he'll run hot into the future. So the debate is that you wanted him in, we couldn't find a place, and what were we willing to give up to get him into the 15, and we would have had to give up something in terms of the way that we wanted to play and potentially what conditions presented in the West Indies. So we always say there's no right or wrong in this, but that's where we landed.
So the analytics of what he's done in this IPL, they are pretty mind-blowing, aren't they?
Yeah, they're pretty significant, striking over 200 for a period of time. His boundary percentage is high. The style of play that he's playing is, as I said, made us turn our heads, and unfortunately couldn't squeeze him into that final 15.
So long-term, you're actually one of his greatest admirers, aren't you? Because you signed him as a teenager.
Yeah, we did at the Renegades. So we've known about Jake for a long period of time. Andrew Lynch, who was our old list manager at Victoria and the Renegades, he put him on the table, I think, when he's about 14 or 15 years of age. So we've known that he's a high-end talent, and what we've seen didn't really shock anyone, but probably the level in which he performed consistently was a huge achievement for himself.
What do you think his trajectory will be from here, having seemingly made this big step?
We played him in the summer, just gone as well, so in the one-day format. So, he's on the radar. We know that we're going to have some positions that transition in the next sort of, short-term future, really. After this World Cup, there could be potentially some turnover, which there inevitably always is. So he's definitely front and centre in the conversations in that top order. And, we've got a quite dynamic top order at the moment with Travis Head, and his ability in the IPL, the way he's played as well, is probably equal to what Jake's done. And then we've got Mitch Marsh and obviously David Warner complementing those top three. So, or those top two batters to make a really solid top three.
Do you suspect our future white ball pairing is Head and Fraser-McGurk?
I think that would be a good indication, yeah. I think that would be where we would head, and that's what we did sort of last summer in exposing Jake at the top of the order. So look, at maybe somewhere in that top three, and we're not dismissing the fact that he may be able to potentially play a role in the middle order as well. So he's only early on in his career, but I'd say likely he'd be up the top of the order, and Matthew Short would be vying for that as well. And I think in the Jake Fraser-McGurk conversation, we're probably dismissing what Matthew Short's been able to do domestically as well. So we feel as though we've got a couple of young, talented players that are ready to go when we need them.
Is it possible that Jake can become the new Dave Warner, the 3-format player? What have you seen as to whether it's possible to refine his red ball game to be that future aggressor at the top of the order?
I don't think it's necessarily about refinement. It's finding the place that best suits him. And I think we're probably dismissing Davey's ability at first-class level before he actually come in. I think he had that real hot streak where he's averaging 50-plus in first-class cricket before he come in. Jake hasn't done that yet. So I'd say that one of David's great strengths that's probably overlooked a little bit is his defensive play, the ability to keep out the good balls for long periods of time, and then obviously to thrive when the scoring options present. So, yeah, I think that Jake can progress into the longer formats, more exposure through that. I know that South Australia played him at the top of the order for a couple of games last year, didn't quite work out. So whether he fits into that middle order in a sort of Travis Head, Mitch Marsh type of role as a sort of counter-attacking player through the middle order, or whether he's able to evolve into the discussion around playing in the top order like David has. But he's on a journey. He's starting it out. Yes, he's exciting. But there's some other players in those conversations as well when it comes to Test match cricket.
Yep. All right, I'll leave this here. But you've sort of denied us all the excitement of the hot young thing. I know that's not part of selection, but it would have been hellishly exciting if we'd been watching the IPL knowing that this was about to come into an Australian shirt.
Yeah, and we think we've got exciting players in and around that as well. As I said, like Head, Warner, Marsh, and then what Cameron Green's been able to do as well in that middle order, playing a different role. His attacking qualities have been there. He opened the batting for Australia against India a couple of years ago, and I think it was a similar conversation coming to that World Cup, whether we'd left Cameron Green to the side at the expense of the team, and he ended up coming in through an injury. I think it was to Josh Inglis, who cut his hand playing golf. We feel as though we've got some exciting players that will be able to take us deep into the World Cup, but unfortunately Fraser's not there. But you've campaigned very hard around it, so well done to you, Gerard.
Will Mitch Marsh be fit for the start of the tournament?
He'll be fit for the start of the tournament, yes. Will he be bowling? That's the big question. So it's been a little bit slower than we would have liked. We felt like it was just going to be a straight-up sort of 3 to 4 week hamstring. It probably hasn't progressed that way, so he's a little bit behind where we'd like him with the ball, but he'll take part in the practice games that we've got in Trinidad against Namibia and the West Indies as a batter. He'll captain clearly those two teams there, but we'll probably slow play the bowling a little bit, and you'll see that unfold as the tournament progresses. So, we've got to take care of the captain. He's an important cog. So we're probably not willing to risk the bowling as early as what we thought it might have been.
How much bowling would he do in this setup?
Yeah, it depends on the structure of team. We've if you play sort of a traditional side with the 7 batters, 3 quicks and 1 spinner, the bowling probably diminishes a little bit there with Stoinis and Maxwell being able to pick up a little bit of the load. But if we were to shift the balance of the side to the 8 batters, and bring in another all-rounder for a quick, potentially, depending on what the surfaces offer, then his bowling would be more important. But I think if we structured up the way that we have in the last few T20 games, his bowling wouldn't be of high demand. But if we were to flip that into an 8-batter setup, then his bowling would be important. So when he comes back onto the table with the ball, then we've got some options in terms of whether we want to play an extra batter. And it's probably been the discussion point in the IPL with the impact player or the substitute or whatever they call that player, where teams have been able to bat a little bit deeper and the scores have gone up. So will that become real in the IPL in the World Cup? The trend that's been set in the IPL, we'll wait and see.
Well, what's your hunch? So it feels like this IPL has escalated things on where it's been previously, but there was a variable put into the mix with the substitute player. Have we taken a step with T20 cricket, or do you think what we'll see internationally is what you're used to?
I think in World Cups, when the pressure goes up, things tend to level out. We had the discussion, I think, leading into 2019 when England were making 400, 450, and we felt like that World Cup potentially would head down that path, but it wasn't to be the case. The scores sort of leveled back to normality, or what we'd call normality, where it was sort of 300 around that total. You have to take an interest in the fact that it's happening. Is it because of the impact player being able to play an extra batter deeper? Yeah, I think that's real. I think the surfaces also lent itself to that type of cricket. And we have seen in the Caribbean, if you look at the Caribbean Premier League, the scores are traditionally a lot lower on those surfaces. And the West Indies have got such dynamic batters, and all those players play in that league, but the scores are a lot lower than other leagues around the world. So we have seen at times scores in franchise cricket escalate, be well above 200. But yeah, I feel like there'll be a little bit of a combination depending on the surface at the time, the opponent. But yeah, hopefully we do see some of those big scores because it's great to watch.
Australia has a great record in World Cup, so we've tried to put that into the debate around what's been happening. Are you of the view long term that Crash calls them heavy duty players, so experienced players win World Cups?
Yeah, and I think it was probably reflected in our selections and the path that we've gone down. We've got some tried and tested players at the World Cup level. In saying that we've been really good at World Cups, probably T20 World Cups has been our Achilles heel. Clearly, we won the one in the UAE, which was a fantastic achievement. But outside of that, our performances in T20 World Cups have been a little bit mixed. So we feel as though with this squad that we've got, we're well placed to be able to go deep into this tournament. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, there is an element of knowing what to expect in those moments and trusting that. And you look at David Warner, for example, we feel as though when it comes to World Cups, he brings out his best, and in particular when he plays for Australia, he brings out his best. So, yeah, we have probably lent towards those players that have been there before and done it.
The format's a little bit different. So the one here, it was sudden death. So as soon as you lost the game to New Zealand and got washed out against England, it made it almost impossible. I wonder if it was a bit of an adjustment. Is there a bit more of a safety layer put in place so that everyone progresses to the next phase?
It feels that way. I mean, 20 teams, 4 groups of 5, and then the top 2 go through. It's interesting in the fact that whatever you do in those initial rounds doesn't carry over to the next stage, which I found fascinating. So the net run rate, or you don't get any benefit of the points that you bank at that stage of the tournament. So it's almost like you play those games, those 4 games, and then it resets to the 8 teams. So I think it's almost like once you get to the 8 teams, it's going to feel very similar to what it has in previous World Cups, where it becomes quite cutthroat. So, and the seeding's already done. So if we get through to the next round, we already know who we're playing. So essentially, it's just a matter of navigating through that first part, and then it resets and you go from there, and then you start to accumulate your points again and your net run rate. So it'll be cutthroat once the final 8 teams take the field.
You're going to fly into New York briefly. Are you glad you're not playing in the unknown of America, or do you wish you were?
Part of me feels as though it would have been nice to play Long Island in a pop-up stadium. It would have been interesting, and I think the conditions will be no doubt similar to what we get in the drop-in surfaces in Australia. I think Damien Hoff's over there preparing them, and I think the soil's very similar and that type of thing. So I think we would have known what we were getting, but part of me feels as though we've missed an opportunity to play in the States with an Australian cricket team. But yeah, we'll know the surfaces that we're playing on in the West Indies, and the West Indies is an equally exciting place to play cricket.
Are you going to have a look at the ground in New York?
Well, I'm going there a day earlier, so I might stroll around and see what it looks like and take in what New York's got to offer.
Yes. It's 24 hours in New York's not a long time, but have you got any view around what the possibilities for cricket are in America?
It feels like it's growing at pace, doesn't it? With the Major League Cricket, there's an Olympics coming up over there as well. I think they've got a great opportunity to grow the game. India, Pakistan in New York is an incredible feature event, and I think the demand will be there, and I think it'll grow exponentially from this. And the ICC put on great events, so I can see cricket really leveraging off this, no doubt.
Start tonight at midnight. It's Pat Cummins and Travis Head versus Mitch Starc. So rather beautifully, at some point we'll get Starc versus Head, one imagines. Andrew McDonald, how cllosely have you followed the IPL?
Yeah, no, pretty closely. So wake up the next morning and look at the scorecards, and then watch any sort of highlights that are of any interest. So yeah, watching Head v Starc will be fascinating. It's always great to see when our players go up against each other. So it's and it's a great effort by the Sunrisers in particular, led by Paddy Cummins, to navigate from where they were last year to where they are this year. So yeah, we'll be watching the finals with great interest, with 5 players still left in it.
What have you made of Pat's captaincy?
Oh, it's just business as usual, isn't it? So he's had success with whatever he's touched so far. And I think the one thing, talking to Dan Vittori, is who's the coach of the Sunrisers, is just his calmness in amongst all the chaos, which is T20 cricket. So he's clear around what he wants to achieve, clear about how he wants to go about it. But most importantly, his form with the ball has been impressive as well. He's played slightly a different role, hasn't bowled as many overs in the power play, bowled a little bit more overs through the middle. But his form has been excellent with the ball.
How's Travis Head been hitting them?
He's been hitting them like he usually hits them.
Geez, in some good form.
He's in good form. Yeah, unfortunately missed out the other night. I think a first ball duck, that can happen. But his ball striking ability. We talked about Jake Fraser-McGurk earlier, but Travis Head equally as brilliant and devastating in this IPL. And it has been a batter-friendly IPL, but some of the shots have been outrageous.
What have you made of Mitch Stark's trial? So high price, under the pump early, and Bharat keeps us up to speed on this. Under the pump in India is a totally different phenomenon, and he's worked his way through the tournament to be leading his team to be title favourites, it seems.
Yeah, they seem to be clearly the best team at the moment, but anything can happen when you get to the cutthroat nature of the finals. But yeah, slow start, which no doubt would have put immense pressure on him with the price tag and the expectation of international players in particular in the IPL, but he's been able to navigate through that. He's had some solid performances through the middle, and he's 2 games away from being able to deliver a title to Calcutta. So, and we know what he's like in big games. If the ball starts to swing early, he can make a massive impact on any game.
The other 2 Australians, Cam Green and Glenn Maxwell, so that's KKR, isn't it?
No, that's RCB.
Get a bit scrambled on my
Royal
IPL
Challengers
teams.
Bangalore.
Yes, RCB. So Green's back end of the tournament seems to have been really good.
Yeah, really good. They had a slow start, so they were a team really under the pump and looked unlikely to venture into this stage of the tournament. But I think they went on a 6-game winning streak, and Cameron Green's been vitally important in that, playing a slightly different role to what we've seen him play for Australia, where he has played at the top of the order. He's been batting through the middle, and at number 4 and 5, they're tricky spots to play in T20 cricket. You've got to continue the momentum of the innings, and he's definitely shown us a different way of playing, and it gives us great flexibility and options. And one of the most impressive parts for me has been his work with the ball. He's been holding down a genuine all-rounders role, bowling out his allotted overs several times, and having an impact with the ball.
And Glenn Maxwell's had an interrupted tournament. He didn't play through the middle stages by his own choice. Have you stayed close to him during this tournament just to see how he is?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we stay in touch with our players regularly via text or chatting to them. I spoke to Glenn a couple of days ago on the back of them getting through to the finals, because that clearly changed his travel plans into the West Indies. No, he's going well, so he's been able to invest a bit of time into his body, which is always an ongoing management issue for him. So, I think it's maybe a blessing in disguise that he hasn't had that workload that we expected him to have through that tournament. But he played an important part in their last round to get them through to the finals. And, he's got an opportunity now to take them to deep into the finals.
Is it a challenge for the players coming out of the IPL into the World Cup, or is that actually the best preparation?
I think it's a little bit of a balance, and probably if you look at each individual, they're probably separate cases. So, as I said there, with Glenn potentially not playing as much is a blessing in disguise for him. And there's others like Mitchell Stark, who hasn't played a lot of T20 cricket over a period of time. He gets more and more game time. So I think it's an individual conversation. The only thing it really alters for us is their entry point into the West Indies. So those guys that have gone deep into the IPL finals, they'll join us in Barbados, whereas the rest of the players will come to Trinidad, where we've got a support period for 7 days with a couple of practice games. So those 5 players will join us a little bit later. So it's always a little bit disjointed. We saw it going into the World Test Championship final last year as well. We had players coming in at different stages. So trying to bring that all together is a great management conundrum, but we feel as though the players are well versed in it now, and so are we.
Who are your practice matches against?
Namibia and the West Indies.
Yep. So the West Indies in their conditions is a good warm-up game.
It's a good warm-up game, yeah. And then we get the true test, obviously, round 2 against England. That's where we'll see exactly where we're at and how we're progressing.
A couple more broadly. So the new series of the test has been released on Friday on Amazon. So you haven't seen this yet, but you lived it. So I got it late last night and I've watched the 40 minutes around the Bairstow stumping, which is clearly there's 3 episodes. It's mainly geared around what does it look like behind the scenes. One of the interesting aspects, so I feel like I knew this, but Crash says it hadn't been reported, was that it was Pat Cummins' idea to stump Johnny Bairstow, and that essentially leaves Alex Carey as the trigger man. Has he been left to carry too much of the burden of that individually as we look back?
My understanding that was highlighted at the time, that they were discussing that, and Pat was discussing it obviously with Alex in lifetime. So yeah, that's a bit of a shock to me to hear that potentially that wasn't conveyed at the time. So my recollection of that was that was conveyed, that Pat was a part of that. And there's no doubt that Alex had to burden a lot of that, in particular with the crowd and the fans over there, that zeroed in on him being that person to be ultimately accountable for what happened. But like anything, there's discussions that go on. Johnny was walking out of his crease, have a go at the stumps, and the rest is history.
So you're not a participant in that, and there's the moment is shown when you talk to Pat in the aftermath during the lunch break, and he's eating, and you have the conversation with him. What are your recollections? We'll all get to see that on Friday. What are your recollections of what you wanted to convey to Pat, given the furor was building?
Yeah, I think my recollection was that you sent it upstairs. It was adjudicated by the umpire. The umpire or the third umpire gave it out, and we've got to move on. So I just remember that moment was quite chaotic because of what happened in the long room. The boys got up into the change room, and in our change room, I suppose that people in stressful moments try to find humour within that, and that's how they dealt with it. But, I mean, it was a challenge to get them lined up, get them back out there and just calm everyone down around what happened, because the reaction from the crowd, I mean, everyone saw that, what happened. So it was about getting our focus back, getting the team back to what we need to do and to go out and continue to drive that test match and ultimately win it, which is what the players were able to do, which is an achievement in amongst all that was happening.
2020 hindsight was the right thing to do?
Yeah, I still stick by it. Yeah, I don't think we're all comfortable with it at the time, and hopefully that shines through in whatever happens in the documentary. But that was real. The players were comfortable with what unfolded, and I think Pat's been on the record in saying that he wouldn't change it, and I think Alex also.
Yep, that is reflected in the observations of the players both at the time and then in hindsight when they sit down. Then with an eye towards this summit, so Marnus Labuschagne is going to open for Glamorgan. Does this pique your interest?
It doesn't pique my interest, but there's no doubt that it's been discussed. I think I've picked up a few people, trying to draw the connection to what may happen next summer. That's a long way away still. I think Marnus, one of the great traits of Marnus is he would do whatever the team needs, and clearly he's come into Glamorgan later in the season. They've got an established 3, 4 and 5, and he's needed to open for what the team requires. And I think I said that on the record last year that most of our players, albeit they're not going to put their hand up to open, but they would do whatever the team needs, and I think that's reflected in what Marnus is doing for Glamorgan.
So it was Usman Khawaja who raised this last week. So he's of the belief that you'll all revisit what the opening position looks like for the summer and then make your decision then, rather than it's Smith locked in. How does that marry up with your thinking?
Oh, we haven't really thought about it. I think I was clear at the end of New Zealand, where we've got time to work our way into the Test summer. We've got a World Cup, we've got a tour to England, which is white ball focused. We'll just decide on that as we get closer. At the moment, we're comfortable leaving New Zealand. Will we revisit it? There's no doubt we'll have conversations around many things that we're going to do leading to the summer, and we'll structure up in the best way we think. The best way to defeat India when they come out here, which is going to be a tough challenge, but part of me is really excited about that Test summer, but we've got a lot to go before then. So India has beaten us the last couple of times out here, and I think the fans are going to get a really great summer.
So Steve Smith is not in this World Cup squad, which makes perfect sense on the way that T20 has evolved, but it's still a big step as he's been a linchpin in Australian teams for so long. Are you at all thinking about the reduction in his white ball schedule, hoping to add to his longevity with red ball?
I think it could potentially be a byproduct of that. There's no doubt about it, but it's not by design. We're not sitting there saying we want to strip back the white ball exposure for Steve Smith. We feel like he's an integral part of our one-day setup in particular. And then when it comes to the T20 conversation, there's if you think back to the last T20 World Cup, he was sort of in and out of that team. He's been in and out of the team leading into this one, and that's more to manage his load around red ball cricket and one-day international cricket as well. So he hasn't found his way into this squad. But, if there's a blessing in disguise by him not playing T20 cricket, then no doubt, hopefully it puts a couple of years onto his Test career.
All right, we'll bring you back to the here and the now. You're on a plane tomorrow. How does Australia win this World Cup?
How does it win? I think we've got many ways, many options of the way that we can structure up. I think our flexibility is going to be a key part. We don't know what the surface is going to offer. There's going to be some slow surfaces, there's going to be some true surfaces, but we feel as though with that 15, we've got so many different ways of playing, and we're not just locked into one way. And I think that's been a trait of the teams that we've picked for World Cups in the past as well. If you think back to the 50 over World Cup, we weren't just hemmed into a corner around this is the way we're going to win it and it's going to be one way. We feel as though we've got multiple ways. We've got a dynamic top order. We've got bowling options. We've got spinning options there in Zampa and Agar if the wickets were to slow up and take some spin. So I think it's our flexibility in the way that we can line up. And I think we've got adaptable players. That's one thing that can play all conditions. So I feel as though that's our strength. And I think that there's some other teams that equally have those strengths. So T20 World Cups can be a little bit of a lottery. There's a lot of luck that potentially goes into it. First port of call is to make our way into the Super 8s, and we'll go from there.
Good luck, Andrew. Always appreciate you coming in, and I look forward to talking to you over there.
Thanks very much, Gerard. Thanks for having us.